एवरीवन नमस्ते। माय नेम इज यांशिका गुप्ता। तो आज हम लोग पढ़ने वाले हैं अ थीफ स्टोरी पार्ट 2। तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं। आई हैड बीन वर्किंग फॉर अनिल फॉर ऑलमोस्ट अ मंथ एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम चीटिंग ऑन द शॉपिंग हैड नॉट डन एनीथिंग in my line of work. I had every opportunity for doing so. Anil had given me a key to the door, and I could come and I go as I pleased. He was the most trusting person I had ever met, and that is why it was so difficult to rob him. It's easy to rob a greedy man because he can afford to be robbed, but it is difficult to rob a careless man. Sometimes he doesn't even notice he has been robbed, and that takes all the pleasure out of the work. Well, it's time. I did some real work. I told myself I am out of practice, and if I don't take the money, he will only waste it on his friends. After all, he doesn't even pay me. Anil was asleep. A beam of moonlight stepped over the balcony and fell on the bed. I sat up on the floor considering the situation. If I took the money, I could catch the 10:30 express to Lucknow. Slipping out of the blanket, I crept up to the bed. Anil was sleeping peacefully. His face was clear and unlined. Even I had more marks on my face, though mine were mostly scars. My hand slid under the mattress searching for the notes. When I found them, I drew them out without a sound. Anil sighed in his sleep and turned on his side towards me. I was startled and quickly crawled out of the room. When I was on the road, I began to run. I had the notes at my waist, held there by the string of my pajamas. I slowed down to a walk and counted the notes. 600 rupees in 50s. I could live like an oil rich Arab for a week or two. When I reached the station, I did not stop at the ticket office. I had never bought a ticket in my life, but dashed straight to the platform. The Lucknow Express was just moving out. The train had still to pick up the speed, and I should have been able to jump into one of the carriages. But I hesitated for some reason I can't explain, and I lost the chance to get away. When the train had gone, I found myself standing alone on the deserted platform. I had no idea where to spend the night. I had no friends, believing that friends were more trouble than help. And I didn't want to make any curious by staying at one of the small hotels near the station. The only person I knew really well was the man I had robbed. Leaving the station, I walked slowly through the bazaar. In my short career as a thief, I had made a study of men's faces when they had lost their goods. The greedy man showed fear, the rich man showed anger, the poor man showed acceptance, but I knew that Anil's face, when he discovered the theft, would show only a touch of sadness, not for the loss of money, but for the loss of trust. I found myself in the Maidan and sat down on a bench. The night was chilly. It was early November, and a light drizzle added to my discomfort. Soon it was raining quite heavily. My shirt and pajamas stuck to my skin, and a cold wind blew the rain across my face. I went back to the bazaar and sat down in the shelter of the clock tower. The clock showed midnight. I felt for the notes. They were damp from the rain. Anil's money. In the morning, he would probably have given me 2 or 3 rupees to go to the cinema, but now I had it all. I couldn't cook his meals, run to the bazaar, or learn to write whole sentences anymore. I had forgotten about them in the excitement of the theft. Whole sentences I knew could one day bring me more than a few hundred rupees. It was a simple matter to steal, and sometimes just as simple to be caught. But to be a really big man, a clever and respected man, was something else. I should go back to Anil, I told myself, if only to learn to read and write. I hurried back to the room feeling very nervous, for it is much easier to steal something than to return it undetected. I opened the door quietly, then stood in the doorway in clouded moonlight. Anil was still asleep. I crept to the bed. I crept to the head of the bed, and my hand came up with the notes. I felt his breath on my hand. I remained still for a minute. Then my hand found the edge of the mattress and slipped under it with the notes. I awoke late next morning to find that Anil had already made the tea. He stretched out his hands towards me. There was a 50 rupee note between his fingers. My heart sank. I thought I had been discovered. I made some money yesterday, he explained. Now you will be paid regularly. My spirits rose, but when I took the note, I saw it was still wet from the night's rain. Today we will write. Today we will start writing sentences, he said. He knew, but neither his lips nor his eyes showed anything. I smiled at Anil in my most appealing way, and the smile came by itself without any effort. बाय रस्किन बॉन्ड। तो ये चैप्टर इसी के साथ कंप्लीट होता है। अब हम लोग पढ़ेंगे नेक्स्ट चैप्टर द मिडनाइट विजिटर। तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं। Osable did not fit any description of a secret agent Fowler had ever read. Following him down the musty corridor of the gloomy French hotel where Osable had a room, Fowler felt let down. It was a small room on the sixth and top floor, and scarcely a setting for a romantic adventure. Osable was, for one thing, fat, very fat, and then there was his accent. Though he spoke French and German passably, he had never altogether lost the American accent he had brought to Paris from Boston 20 years ago. You are disappointed, Osable said Weasley over his shoulder. You were told that I was a secret agent, a spy dealing in espionage and danger. You wished to meet me because you are a writer, young and romantic. You envisioned mysterious figures in the night, the crack of pistols, drugs, and the wine. Instead, you have spent a dull evening in a French music hall with a sloppy fat man who, instead of having messages slipped into his hand by dark eyed beauties, get only a prosaic telephone call making an appointment in his room. You have been bored, the fat man chuckled to himself as he unlocked the door of his room and stood aside to let his frustrated guest enter. You are disillusioned, Osable told him. But take cheer, my young friend. Presently you will see a paper, a quite important paper for which several men and women have risked their lives. Come to me. Some day that paper may well affect the course of history. In that thought is drama, is there not? As he spoke, Osable closed the door behind him. Then he switched on the light, and as the light came on, Fowler had his first authentic thrill of the day. For halfway across the room, a small automatic pistol in the hand, stood a man. Osable blinked a few times. Max, he wheezed. You gave me quite a start. I thought you were in Berlin. What were you doing here in my room? Max was slender, a little less than tall, with features that suggested slightly the crafty, pointed countenance of a fox. There was about him, aside from the gun, nothing specially menacing. The report, he murmured, the report that is being brought to you tonight concerning some new missiles. I thought I would take it from you. It will be safer in my hands than in yours. Osable moved to an armchair and sat down heavily. I am going to raise the devil with the management this time, and you can bet on it, he said grimly. This is the second time in a month that somebody had got into my room through that nuisance of a balcony. Fowler's eyes went to the single window of the room. It was an ordinary window against which now the night was pressing blackly. Balcony? Max said, with a rising inflection. No, a passkey. I did not know about the balcony. It might have saved me some trouble had I known. It's not my balcony, Osable said with extreme irritation. It belongs to the next apartment. He glanced explanatory at Fowler. You see, he said, this room used to be part of a large unit, and the next room, through that door there, used to be the living room. It had the balcony which extends under my window now. You can get onto it from the empty room two doors down, and somebody did last month. The management promised to block it off, but they haven't. Max glanced at Fowler, who was standing stiffly, not far from Osable, and waved the gun with a commanding gesture. Please sit down, he said. We have a wait of half an hour, I think. 31 minutes, Osable said moodily. The appointment was for 12:30. I wish I knew how you learned about the report, Max. The little spy smiled heavily. And he wished we knew how your people got the report. But no harm has been done. I will get it back tonight. What is that? Who is at the door? Fowler jumped at the sudden knocking at the door. Osable just smiled. That will be the police, he said. I thought that such an important paper as the one we are waiting for should have a little extra protection. I told them to check on me to make sure everything was all right. Max bit his lip nervously. The knocking was repeated. What will you do now, Max? Osable asked. If I do not answer the door, they will enter anyway. The door is unlocked, and they will not hesitate to shoot. Max's face was black with anger as he backed swiftly towards the window. He swung a leg over the sill. Send them away, he warned. I will wait on the balcony. Send them away or I will shoot and take my chances. The knocking at the door became louder and a voice was raised. Mr. Osable, Mr. Osable. Keeping his body twisted so that his gun's tail covered the fat man and his guest. The man at the window grasped the frame with his free hand to support himself, and he swung his other leg up and over the windowsill. The doorknob turned swiftly. Max pushed with his left hand to free himself from the sill and dropped to the balcony, and then as he dropped he screamed once shrilly. The door opened and a waiter stood there with a tray, a bottle, and two glasses. Here is the drink you ordered for when you returned, he said, and set the tray on the table. Deftly uncorked the bottle and left the room. White faced, Fuller stared after him, but he stammered. The police? There were no police. Osable sighed. Only Henry, whom I was expecting. But won't that man out on the balcony? Fuller began. No, said Osable, he won't return. You see, my young friend, there is no balcony. तो इसी के साथ ये चैप्टर ख़त्म होता है और इसके राइटर हैं रॉबर्ट आर्थर। तो चलिए अब हम लोग नेक्स्ट चैप्टर शुरू करते हैं। अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ ट्रस्ट। Everyone thought that Horace Denby was a good, honest citizen. He was about 50 years old and unmarried, and he lived with a housekeeper who worried over his health. In fact, he was usually very well and happy except for attacks of hay fever in summer. He made locks and was successful enough at his business to have two helpers. Yes, Horace Denby was good and respectable, but not completely honest. 15 years ago, Horace had served his first and only sentence in a prison library. He loved rare, expensive books, so he robbed a safe every year. Each year, he planned carefully just what he would do, stole enough for last 12 months, and secretly bought the books he loved through an agent. Sorry. Now walking in the bright July sunshine, he felt sure that this year's robbery was going to be as successful as all the others. For 2 weeks he had been studying the house at Saltover Grange, looking at his rooms, its electrical wiring, its path, and its garden. This afternoon, the two servants who remained in the Grange while the family was in London had gone to the movies. Horace saw them go and he felt happy in spite of a little tickle of hay fever in his nose. He came out from behind the garden wall, his tools carefully packed in a bag on his back. There were about 15,000 pounds worth of jewels in the Grange safe. If he sold them one by one, he expected to get at least 5,000, enough to make him happy for another year. There were three very interesting books coming up for sale in the summer. Now he would get the money he wanted to buy them. He had seen the housekeeper hang the key to the kitchen door on a hook outside. He put on a pair of gloves, took the key, and opened the door. He was always careful not to leave any fingerprints. A small dog was lying in the kitchen. It stirred, made a noise, and moved its tail in a friendly way. All right, Sherry, Horace said as he passed. All you had to do to keep dogs quiet was to call them by their right names and show them love. Bye.